Sportak made sure his human costume looked good. It was hard to look human when you were a goblin. Sportak was little enough to be a human child. That was good. He had green skin, pointy ears, and long arms. That wasn't so great. His costume squished down his ears and bunched up his arms, so he looked like a real human. Well, sort of. He also had a Lake Scatterwood camp t-shirt and blue shorts. The shirt hid some of his bumpy skin that showed through the human costume. He scratched the fake hair on top of his mask and mumbled, "This will never, ever, ever work." But he had a mission, so he walked through the middle of camp between all the real human children and tried to act human. It wasn't as easy as you might think. Humans were weird. Human children were very odd indeed, Sportak thought. They ran a lot. They yelled even more. They picked their noses and scratched their bottoms. Even goblins don't do that. Gross. He didn't like how humans stood up straight. Standing up that straight would get your head bumped in a low tunnel or would get you hit in the face by a flying bat. He guessed that humans didn't spend much time in caves. Sportak mumbled to himself if they did, they would probably wipe boogers on the walls with all that nose picking. Sportak took out his notebook and his little pencil, and he wrote down, "Humans don't spend much time in caves. Too busy picking their noses, maybe." He walked through one of the buildings. Suspect. All right. He walked toward one of the buildings. It was pretty big. Whatever this was, it would take a long time to build in the goblin camp they wanted to make. He was about to write that in his Goblin Spy notebook when a big human asked, "Are you lost?" Sportek looked around, pointed to himself, and said, "No, I belong here because I am a human boy away at camp." The big human tilted his head and stared. Sportek thought maybe his costume wasn't working. Then the big human said, "Whatever you say, pal." Sportek nodded and wrote something in his notebook. "What's your name, pal?" Sportek thought for a moment and said, "That's right, my name is Pal." The big human shook his head. "Which cabin are you from? Lunch is almost over." Sportek thought and then said, "The purple one." "What?" Sportek spoke louder. "The purple one." "I don't know what that means. Which number cabin are you from?" "Number, okay. My number cabin is 74. "We don't have 74 cabins, kid." Sportek looked behind him for a human named Kid. He didn't see anyone, so he just went inside. The big human called again, "Hey, kid!" Sportek kept walking because the guy was still talking to whoever the other little boy was. As the human children sat at long tables eating, this was something Sportek looked forward to. He sat down at an empty seat and waited to be served. One of the other boys said, "Are you new here?" "I am new here. My name is Pal." The others at the table introduced themselves as Sam, Cody, Jake, and the girl human was Rebecca. "Are you hungry?" Sam asked. "I sure am. When does the food cart come around?" Cody answered, "You have to go get your own food, Pal." Pal got up and took a tray from another human boy. Rebecca took it out of Pal's hands and handed it back to the boy, who was staring with wide eyes. Rebecca said, you can't take someone else's food. You need to go get your own tray from the window." Sportek wrote in his notebook, "Don't take food from other campers. Get your own from the window." He started to walk toward one of the glass windows, but Rebecca took him to the opening for the kitchen. She led him through, picking out his food. He took lots of notes after he sat down. Jake asked, "Are you writing a book there, pal?" "No, just taking notes." "Notes for what?" Sam asked. "Well, I'm not a goblin trying to figure out how to build our own camp underground, if that's what you're asking." Jake cleared his throat and said, "No, that wasn't what I was asking." Sportek took a bite of his meal. He paused long enough to write, "Camp food is delicious." He gobbled up the rest. "What activities do you have today?" Rebecca asked. Sportek said, "I don't know. What activities are there?" The human campers listed off things as fast as Sportek could write them down. Horseback riding, swimming, archery, hiking, bird watching, basket weaving, kickball, and more. Sportek said, "I want to do all the things. All of them." Sam started to say, "Well, you can't do all of..." Jake said, "That sounds great. Let's do all of them today." Sam didn't seem sure, but Jake was so excited that Sportek got excited. He quickly scribbled, "Being excited is contagious." They ran from place to place doing every activity. Sportek couldn't take his notebook into the water, but there was so much he wanted to write down. When he got out of the lake, he had to squeeze a ton of water out of his human costume. He looked like a giant water balloon for a moment. Later, they had a water balloon fight. After he dried off his notebook, he carefully wrote, "Water balloons are fun. They sometimes hurt, but mostly they are fun. We need to get a lake too." It was hard to write while riding a horse. The note was hard to read, but it said, "Horseback riding in caves won't be easy." Sportek made a basket. He made art with clay. He played kickball. They got to eat another meal called dinner time. Sportak was excited. He was so excited he forgot to write down all the details. When he remembered, he wrote, If food is delicious, you'll want to eat more than once a day. Switch meals from goblin slop to camp food. Pizza, hot dogs, and fries are really good." After dinner, they played some more, and then the kids bought snacks at the camp store. It was all candy and soda. Sportek wrote as fast as he could, We have to get camp store candy for our camp. We have to." As it got dark, he got ready to go, but Rebecca said, "It's time for the campfire." And there was more eating. No wonder human children were so big. They never stopped eating. He made a note of it. They roasted marshmallows, even though they'd eaten way more than once today already. The goblin, disguised as a human, wrote in his spy notebook, "We have to get marshmallows for roasting. They may be the best part of camp." As the human children moved toward the cabin, Sportek hugged all four of his friends and said, "This was the best day ever. You have been a big help with my mission." Then he ran off in the dark to get back to the goblin caves to report all he had learned about camp. He looked over his shoulder one time and saw the children giving him strange looks. Sportek the goblin took a moment to make another note. "Camp is the best thing ever, but maybe you shouldn't hug your friends goodbye because they give you a strange look when you run back to your goblin cave." He heard a human boy, maybe Sam, it sounded like Sam, said, "My stomach hurts." Sportek shook his head. "I bet it does." He was going to make a note about so much eating and stomach aches, but then he decided not to. If he reported stomach aches, they might not get any candy for their goblin camp store. Sportek was excited, and he knew excitement was contagious. He couldn't wait to report to the other goblins everything he had learned.